Advisory Board.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our panelists and those in the audience and my good friend Vern Ehlers. I want to welcome everyone to today's hearing on nanotechnology education and thank our witness for being here. This hearing stands adjourned. Little nano joke. Developments in the field of nanotechnology are incredibly exciting. Science now has the ability to not just see or perceive matter at its smallest scale, but also to manipulate it and create new materials. I am certain the flood of discoveries and applications just around the corner will touch every aspect of our lives, including medicine and computing. Indeed, some of these applications, like enhanced textiles, have already arrived, generating billions of dollars in economic impact. Questions we're concerned with today is how we will build a workforce to propel discovery and keep America at the forefront of nanotechnology. This question once again brings us to science education, which has been an issue of great concern for this committee. At present, the federal government invests $1.5 billion in nanotechnology research and development through the National Nanotechnology Initiative. Certainly, this investment is crucial. However, if we ignore the fact that there simply are not enough American students prepared to carry out this research and development, we could find much of that investment wasted as other countries take the lead in nanotechnology. We face two very steep challenges in science education. One, to raise students' interest in math and science. The other, to raise their competency. The Nanotechnology in the Schools Act, which I'll let my friend Congresswoman Hooley from Oregon explain in a moment in detail, will offer an intriguing way to attack both of these challenges. I'm interested in hearing from our witnesses today about how putting incredibly advanced technology in the hands of students can capture their attention and inspire them to pursue math and science career paths, especially in the area of nanotechnology. I'm also interested to hear about the investment the federal government is already making in nanotech education, both for students and the general public, and to learn more about the impact these investments are having. I'll now yield to my good friend Congressman Ehlers, Dr. Ehlers, the ranking member on the committee.
I thank the chairman and appreciate his demonstration of his nano sense of humor. Sorry about that.
No, got it, though. That's pretty good.
Actually, I'm not sorry. Since you got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing will examine a bill to prepare students for careers in nanotechnology and look at the current state of nanotechnology education at the high school and undergraduate level. The Science and Technology Committee has supported a number of nanotechnology and education activities through the National Nanotechnology Initiative and remains interested in ways that we can improve these programs. I am glad that we will hear today from a variety of individuals who all agree that nanotechnology is an important part of our future science and technology workforce. It would be wonderful if every high school and college student had the opportunity to use nanotechnology equipment and become exposed to the cutting edge of this innovative field at an early age. The intent of the bill, to grow the nanotechnology workforce by capturing student interest early, is clearly commendable. With that said, though, I have some reservations as to the way that this bill attempts to achieve these goals. Earlier this year, the Research and Science Education Subcommittee examined another bill which authorized a pilot grant program at the National Science Foundation for high school laboratory equipment. The Partnership for Access to Laboratory Science, better known as PALS, bill became a part of the America Competes Act, signed into law in August. The schools eligible for the PALS grants have to be high-need schools, and I believe this is appropriate. When we were evaluating the PALS bill, this subcommittee learned from another panel of witnesses that at many schools the need for even the most rudimentary laboratory materials was indeed high. We also learned from witnesses that at times federal science education programs do not adequately align with state science and math standards, making it difficult for well-intentioned materials to be utilized by a typical classroom school teacher. That leads to my concerns about this bill, H.R. 2436, because it provides equipment for low-need schools. Perhaps a better route to achieve the bill's goals would be to encourage companies to donate equipment and employee time to exceptional high schools and undergraduate programs, perhaps even considering tax incentives for that program. This committee's bipartisan goal has always been to ensure that all of our nation's students receive an excellent education in science, and not just the low-need schools. And we will not waver from that goal. I hope that our witnesses today can help us determine how H.R. 2436 would help us achieve that goal so that all students benefit, not just those with exceptional teachers, students, and equipment. That I yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Ehlers. Ms. Hooley, I now recognize the author of the bill, the gentlelady from Oregon, Darlene Hooley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you holding this hearing today and appreciate your interest in this. Everyone in this room can agree that the emerging field of nanotechnology holds tremendous potential that is becoming more and more evident with every new breakthrough. Research in this area has already led to new cancer treatments, more powerful computers, energy conversion, and storage breakthroughs. Nanotechnology will revolutionize manufacturing, computing, energy, healthcare, national defense, and many other sectors by improving the way things are designed and made. It is clearly necessary for the United States to remain at the forefront of research and development in the field of nanotechnology. Already we are facing challenges to our leadership by China, Japan, the European Union, India, and others. For America to remain and expand its leadership, we must have a full pipeline of scientists and engineers who are capable of conducting nanotechnology research and development. And we must have a scientifically literate public able to exploit and understand this new science. The purpose of my legislation, the Nanotechnology in the Schools Act, is to expose American students to the high-tech realm of nanotechnology, encouraging them in a greater interest in this new field. It authorizes $15 million for the National Science Foundation to create a grant program and making it possible for high schools, two-year colleges, undergraduates, serving institutions, and informal science education centers to purchase nanotechnology equipment for educational purposes. These grants can be used to purchase instruments and materials to teach nanotechnology principles to students and the public. In addition, the funds can be used for training teachers and professors to use these tools in the classroom and the laboratory. I want to thank all of our witnesses for agreeing to testify today and for providing your valuable insight into the best way that we introduce nanotechnology to America's greatest assets, its students. And with that, I yield back the remainder of my time.
Thank the gentlelady for her initiative with the legislation and for opening remarks. We've also been joined by Dr. Jerry McNerney. If there are other members who wish to submit additional opening statements, the statements will be added to the record at this point. And at this point, I'd like to introduce our witnesses. Dr. David Ucko of the National Science Foundation is Deputy Division Director of the Education and Human Resource Division on Research and Learning. He coordinates educational activities in nanoscale science and engineering across NSF. Dr. Navida Ganguly is the head of the Science Department at Oak Ridge High School in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Dr. Hamish Fraser is the Ohio Regents Eminent Scholar and a professor of material science at Ohio State University. I'll briefly skip Dr. Ray Vandiver in favor of Ms. Hooley, who will introduce him, as he's the gentleman from Portland and across the river from me. Welcome, Doctor. Mr. Sean Murdock is the Executive Director of the NanoBusiness Alliance, and Dr. Gerald Wheeler is the Executive Director of the National Science Teachers Association. Ms. Hooley, would you care to introduce Dr. Vandiver?
Yes, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Vandiver. He is the Vice President of the New Project Development for the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, a wonderful place, by the way. He is the Principal Department Head responsible for development, design, fabrication, maintenance of OMSI's public exhibitions and programs. Dr. Vandiver received his Ph.D. in atomic and molecular physics from the University of Missouri-Rolla. He's been involved in informal science education for the past 17 years. He's been a recipient of several grant awards in the field of informal science education from the National Science Foundation and NASA. He's been invited to sit on numerous panels as a representative of the science museum field, including NSF, National Institute of Health, National Academy's Committee on Assessing Technological Literacy. Thank you, Doctor, for being here today. I'm looking forward to hearing your insights on this issue. Thank you. And welcome, by the way.
Our witnesses should know we have a 5-minute opening statement period and followed by questions. As I mentioned to some earlier, this is a friendly committee. We have good discussion, but by and large it's positive on a topic like this, especially. If you don't talk about global warming, we'll have even less of an argument, probably. Although thus far with the committee makeup, you'd be in good shape if a few other members join us to have a more spirited repartee on that. As Dr. Ehlers pioneered in this committee, if the yellow light goes on, you'll have about a 3-second warning, then the chair will drop out from under you, you'll disappear, and we'll not hear from you again. So with that, let me begin with Dr. David Ucko. Thank you all for being here.
Chairman Baird, Ranking Member Ehlers, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today about NSF education programs in nanoscale science and engineering. NSF invests in a comprehensive set of programs in formal and informal education. This investment is important because nanotechnology is an emerging field expected to have significant economic, workforce, and societal impact. It fits into the larger picture of improving science and engineering education and literacy by engaging learners in current research and the ongoing process of discovery. Nanoeducation presents some challenges. The content is abstract, and new discoveries get made daily. It's not in the mainstream K-12 curriculum, and adding new content to existing overcrowded curricula and state standards, assessments, and textbooks isn't easy. Educational research and evaluation are limited. This context has guided NSF program development. In FY07, investment for Nanoeducation Awards was $28 million out of a total NNI investment of $373 million. Like other education awards, they target nearly all audiences from young learners through adults via a wide range of activities. I'd now like to highlight some examples. NSF Awards develop and research instructional resources for students and teachers in grades 7 to 12 when students begin to consider careers. NSF has funded a flagship program to bridge formal education and nano research through the National Center for Learning and Teaching in Nanoscale Science and Engineering at Northwestern University and other partners. It is developing the next generation of leaders in nano teaching and learning and building capacity through work in learning research and development, nano concept research and development, higher education, professional development for high school teachers, and evaluation. Other K-12 projects are creating classroom modules. They follow a rigorous methodology based on determining initial student knowledge, identifying appropriate nano concepts and learning goals, developing student assessments, carrying out pilot tests and revision, dissemination, and assessing student understanding. Although nanoscience is far from a major curriculum thread, these projects are developing and testing models that could pave the way. Advances in nanotechnology research also provide new opportunities in post-secondary education. The most recent nanotechnology undergraduate education competition focused on engineering of devices and systems and on societal, ethical, economic, and environmental issues. Nearly half the recent awards included equipment such as scanning or atomic force microscopes as part of courses, modules, or laboratory experiences. NSF awards promote public engagement and understanding. The Nanoscale Informal Science Education Network at Boston's Museum of Science and collaborators is linking science museums and nano research centers to develop exhibits, programs, public forums, and media for implementation at more than 100 partner sites. In addition to increasing public knowledge, these activities provide a new model and national infrastructure for connecting scientific research and informal education. NSF also supports education and outreach programs through its nanoscale science and engineering centers. Since 2001, NSF has funded 17 such centers, along with 2 user facility networks and others that focus on nano. All conduct a wide variety of educational activities complementary to their scientific research. In addition, many core programs throughout NSF support nano education. In advanced technological education, for example, the Penn State Center for Nanotechnology Education and Utilization has generated associate degree programs in nanofabrication at 20 sites across the state, including every community college. So far, 2 nano education workshops have been held to foster a community of practice among educators from these diverse projects. A third being planned will provide the opportunity to disseminate initial findings so that others can build on them. In addition, the workshop will help inform NSF as it considers further opportunities for investment. NSF will also be guided by a program evaluation that will analyze and synthesize project reports and study the impact of researcher-educator collaboration. With regard to the Nanotechnology in the Schools Act, purchase of equipment along with training can assist learning and teaching. On the other hand, the many programs at NSF have been and will continue to carry out legislative intent. The subcommittee perhaps could consider revisiting this issue after research and evaluation have generated further knowledge about which educational strategies prove most effective for different audiences. I hope these comments provide some context for your deliberation, and I'd be glad to answer questions.
Thanks.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Baird, Ranking Member Ehlers, and members of the subcommittee. It is an honor today for me to appear before the subcommittee to testify regarding the Nanotechnology in the Schools Act. I'm the chairperson of Oak Ridge High School, the science department, and I've taught environmental science, the AP level, honors genetics, and freshman biology for 12 years. Before that, I was a research scientist at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville and the University of California, Irvine. So I have taught at both levels. I have taught high school as well as college. I resigned from the university because I thought that if I was going to get students interested in science, it was not going to be at the university. They had already made up their minds about what they wanted to do. So I'm not sure how much influence I've had, but I think I can say that I've had an influence on some people. And so I realized how important it is for us to start looking at cutting-edge technology and science at high school level. We can teach, and the premise that we are the sage on the stage is slowly going out. That there's no way you can do that. What we would like to do is we would like to become the guide on the side, and one of the ways to do that is to bring technology to our high school students. And we have, at Mines High School, we teach AP biology, we teach DNA recombinant technology, but we were giving lectures and using paper and pencil as simulations. That is not what students will remember. They will listen to it, listen to me, listen to my colleagues, walk out the door 15 minutes later and it's gone. So we went ahead and bought the recombinant DNA technology equipment. I'm going to use a few terms here. It's the PCR, it's called the polymerase chain reaction machines. We bought those. We bought all the equipment that we need to do cutting edge science for recombinant DNA technology. And we went and trained ourselves, because we have to train ourselves before we can train our students. So we went ahead and did that, and now it has become very commonplace. We can isolate our own DNA, cut it, and then run it out on gels, and the students can see what their DNA patterns look like. They will remember that. They will not remember if I stood up there and told them that this is what your DNA pattern looked like. The nanotechnology in the High Schools Act, when I heard about it, it is very, very exciting, not only for me, for my students, because that's who I represent, my students. So for them to be able to handle the kind of technology in high school is something that is, if you told me this 5 years ago, it would have been mind-boggling. I said, no, you can't do it. But now we can. There is equipment which is user-friendly enough that my students can use it. There is an electron microscope which is a tabletop, which can be used by the students. I did electron microscopy in my previous life, and I know how complicated it was. But now, if we have the equipment to do it, then my students can. And nanotechnology is not another subject. It is not another subject. I'm not trying to teach another subject. It is something that will apply across the board in physics, in chemistry, in biology, in environmental science, in every sphere of their learning. I teach environmental science, and I talk about the alternative energy. But then if I can have the nanotechnology show that how the energy conservation can actually happen, they will remember that. They will not remember that I said that we have to turn off our lights when you walk out of the door. I mean, it is a much more powerful tool when they will see it actually in their own hands. The tools that are available now that we will be able to buy with this, if we get the grant, is something that my students will understand, they will be able to use, and our students can use it. My school has a very, it's a unique situation. We have a lot of interaction with the scientists at the Oak Ridge National Lab. And we send our students there to use very sophisticated technology to do a lot of science. Last year, they came in fourth in the Siemens Science and Technology competition. This year, we were the national winners. So if I had this equipment at my high school, it would not be 3 students that would have access to this kind of sophisticated technology. I would have a lot more students that would have the opportunity to use this technology. And maybe not 3 students, this time maybe there'll be 10 students, maybe in 10 years there'll be 30 students who will be excited because it's a sense of empowerment. They are doing the experiments themselves. They are looking at the results. They are looking at the data. And that is what they will remember. That is what will excite them. Not me saying that this is what the tool is. The tool has to be in the hands of the students. We are a high school which has some of the specialized equipment. But we are in the process, when we redesigned our high school, and it is still in this construction phase, and we're still hopping over little sites everywhere. There we are equipped to handle distance learning. And so what we would like to do is use that to reach out to the community around us, to other schools who may not have that kind of access to the equipment that we have. We already run the AP summer institutes to expose teachers from across the country to the different technology and the different ways of teaching an AP class. When we have our distance learning system set up, we will bring students to our high school in the summers to run these kind of programs, to expose them to these things. So it is something that we can do, and I firmly believe that our students are bright enough and are capable enough to be able to handle this. And I'm not talking about...
Dr. Ganguly, I'm going to ask you to summarize here because
yes,
we're
yes, I'm not just talking about my upper-level students. I would like to expose all students at all levels to this kind of technology if it is available to us. Happy to answer questions when you're...
Thank you very much, and congratulations on the achievements of your students. Very impressive. We've been joined by Mr. Neugebauer from Texas as well. Dr. Fraser.
Chairman Baird, Ranking Member Ehlers, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for your invitation, allowing me to be here and join this hearing this afternoon. I've been in academia for about 35 years, about half of that as an Illini and more recently as a Buckeye at Ohio State. I've graduated about 40 PhD students, 40 MS students, and several hundred of our engineering undergrads have been exposed to my teaching and help, I hope. My area of expertise is in advanced materials characterization, which is an enabling part of nanotechnology, and that is being able to see the stuff that you make that's on such a fine scale. And the area that I interact with, the industrial areas, aerospace and automotive materials. So the equipment we use is extremely expensive, very sophisticated, and quite costly to maintain. And so naturally it's the subject of a graduate focus, where we can get reasonable funding from the federal government to help us in that research activity. But another part of my job, of course, is to be concerned about development of the workforce, and in the area of materials science and engineering, but also in nanotechnology. And so education in any of these areas is important. This afternoon we're talking about nanotechnology. So I've been working this issue quite vigorously, using local funding to do that. And what I have found most effective is to capture the imagination of the kids. And materials characterization is a very, very effective way of doing this. And I want to show you a graph, please. What you see on the first image there is just a shiny gray piece of metal. It happens to be an advanced titanium alloy used in aerospace applications. And it looks rather dull, of course, because it just looks like a piece of shiny metal. But if you look at this at higher magnification, if you click, please, you now see details of the microstructure. You'll see that scale marker is 5 micrometers, and a human hair is about 40 micrometers in diameter. Get an idea that we're extremely high magnification, where all the fun is happening in the material, and all the properties are being determined. And this is what will turn the kids on. This is in materials. Another example, click please, would be then the eye of a fly. Look like one of those things that buzzes around you. And you can even magnify the lens of the eye. Click please, and you'll see that there are other features there. And these are things that can be seen by these tabletop SEMs now. And this is the type of thing that captures the imagination of these kids and will enable us I believe, to attract them into science and technology and engineering. So specifically, I'm very excited about this bill because perhaps I believe a difference is that this bill will put equipment in the classroom for professors and high school teachers to use with the students. And the important thing of characterization equipment is that they'll be able to see the stuff, which they will not be able to do with their eyes. So specifically, I think we need to capture the imagination of the students, and this will draw a significant number of students into this subject. This bill will provide equipment and class modules, development of class modules that will allow a wide number of faculty to be able to teach this subject who are not yet able to do so because of their backgrounds. And I think it will greatly assist in developing the requisite workforce. Conversely, it will prepare our students for quite high-paying jobs where there is, in fact, a great demand and a growing demand, and that will permit us to remain globally competitive. So I cut a little bit out of what I wanted to say because I wanted to actually pick up on Ranking Member Ayler's comment about all schools. So I think you made an extremely important point there. So I'd like to offer an opinion of why I think this bill can actually address your point. It's a very good point that we need to have equipment at the schools, but we need particular kind of equipment. The normal equipment you find in industry and universities is too complicated for schools to use. I bought a new scanning electron microscope some years ago at about $180,000 for undergraduate programs. It's not been used yet by my faculty because it's just too complicated to bring into the classroom. So we need the simplified equipment, which the modern developments has allowed, and we need to develop educational modules for teachers to be able to use them, and this bill will allow that. In addition to the equipment, I think we need to have PC-based simulators of this equipment that will fit on every computer in every lab in every school. And so the use of the equipment will be much greater than just where the actual instrument resides. And the simulators will do a good job, and we've used those, and it's very effective. I hope I was able to address your point somewhat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fraser. Dr. Vandiver.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Ehlers, members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify today about the ways in which nanotechnology education can help inspire people to pursue careers in science, the importance of nanotechnology as an element of 21st century science education, and the key role of informal science education in this process. I serve on the staff of the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, known as OMSI, a nonprofit, independent, scientific, educational, and cultural resource center dedicated to improving the public's understanding of science and technology. Informal science centers such as OMSI play an important role in math and science education at all grade levels through permanent and rotating exhibits, teacher training and professional development programs, and distance learning initiatives that are able to reach small and isolated communities. Science centers and museums are able to complement and enhance efforts at schools in a large geographic region, providing expertise and programs on a large variety of science subjects. Science and technology centers are motivated to present emerging and cutting-edge concepts in science and technology. It is inherent in our missions to strive to present the latest achievements and breakthroughs. Nanotechnology is an important component of OMSI's educational mission in inspiring, informing, and involving our visitors in cutting-edge scientific research. It is only recently that tools and equipment in the forms of exhibits, simulations, and models on the subject of nanotechnology have been developed and tested with museum educators and museum visitors. Nano is a difficult and abstract topic to tackle in the informal setting. Additional resources are needed to help our field advance new methods for creating context and relevance for our audiences. The Nanoscale Informal Science Education Network, NISENet, an NSF-funded initiative, is working to develop some resources for museums on the topic of nanotechnology. NISENet, currently beginning its third year, has as its goal to create a functioning network of 100 science and technology centers across the United States, working together to present the nature and potential impacts of nanoscale science and technology. This is a powerful vision, and it is the largest collective effort across the field of science and technology centers to advance knowledge and understanding of a specific topic, nanotechnology. As a member of NISENet, OMSI is active in the development of exhibits and programs designed to inform the general public on the topic of nanoscale science and engineering. Because the general public knows very little about nanoscale science and its applications, OMSI's approach, consistent with the other working partners of NISENet, is to present nanoscale science and technology in a way that inspires wonder and motivates the user to seek more depth and understanding of the topic. The front-end work within the NISENet has shown that less than half of the adult population of the United States has ever heard of nanotechnology, and less than 20% can provide any level of basic definition. However, the studies also show that the general public is interested in the topic and possesses a positive sense about nanotechnology. You know, in all my years in physics research and science education, I can only think of one time that my father, who's a carpenter in St. Louis, Missouri, has ever contacted me requesting information about an emerging technology, and that was nanotechnology, so that was pretty cool. While most people think of the Science Museum as a place to go to have a fun family science learning experience, most science museums also provide community learning opportunities outside their walls. This can be in the form of teacher training, distance learning, and classroom programs. OMSI, for instance, provides distance learning opportunities throughout Oregon and Southwest Washington. As an example, OMSI works with educators in rural Fossil, Oregon, population of less than 500, to provide resources and science learning experiences that they would not otherwise have access. Science centers such as OMSI could take advantage of this new nanotechnology education grant program, which could help to purchase advanced equipment and educational materials, enabling outreach and teacher development for many schools and communities. In conclusion, I would once again like to thank the subcommittee for your attention to this important issue. Our future as a nation of discoverers, inventors, and innovators depends on education and inspiration. I believe that the Nanotechnology in the Schools Act will help ensure that our scientific future stays bright. I look forward to the opportunity to take advantage of this program.
Thank you, Doctor. We've been joined by Dr. Dan Lipinski. Thank you, Dan. Mr. Murdock.
I'd like to thank you, Chairman Baird. we'll take it again. I would like to thank you, Chairman Baird, Ranking Member Ehlers, and the members of the House Subcommittee on Research and Science Education for the opportunity to testify on a topic of increasing importance to my membership, which is the need to ensure a talented and growing nanotechnology workforce in this nation. I'd also like to thank Congresswoman Hooley and Congressman Lipinski and all the other co-sponsors of this important legislation. My name is Sean Murdock. I'm the Executive Director of the NanoBusiness Alliance. We are the primary policy and advocacy organization for the entrepreneurs and innovators working to commercialize nanoscience innovations in America, working to translate the fundamental breakthroughs that have been created through the federal government's investment in nanoscience into real-world products and processes that improve our nation's economy, our health, and our quality of life. This subcommittee and the Science and Technology Committee in general have long recognized the importance of nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is a new way of making things that bridges traditional disciplines like biology, chemistry, physics, and material science. From a business and commercial perspective, nanotechnology is really the frontier of science-based innovation. It is increasingly being viewed as the toolkit the businesses will need to draw upon to remain competitive in the 21st century. As you know, there's a global race for leadership that is well underway. This committee got us off to a fantastic, wonderful running start with the 21st Century Nanotech R&D Act, a very important piece of legislation which will be coming up for reauthorization, and put us well on our course. Recently, other countries around the globe have elevated their commitments as well. In particular, Europe with the 7th Framework, and now Russia. I brought with me some news. Russia has committed $5.1 billion to nanoscience research from the oil windfall that they have. There's a story in the Financial Times yesterday. So this is a global competition that is getting increasingly competitive. And folks are focused on the research. But we must not only lead in the fundamental research, we have to lead in the translation of that research into new products that make us competitive, that employ people, and that do improve the quality of life. In order to do that, we need to have a world-class workforce, and there's long been recognition of the gathering storm, and I certainly don't need to tell this committee about the dynamics of the need for technologically proficient scientists and engineers. However, what I do want to impart is that this is not just a long-term problem. We need to be thinking about solving this and taking significant steps to address it today. Already, nanotech companies throughout the country are finding it difficult to attract and retain the talent that they need. It's a common topic of conversation amongst the membership. And it's particularly acute in some of the areas that don't have well-developed tech hubs, you know, as Silicon Valley and Boston do, but in the Midwest where I'm from Chicago. And while H-1B visas provide a temporary solution, it is just that. We all recognize that we need to get ahead of the curve. That is going to be less and less effective moving forward as the opportunities grow throughout the world and the world becomes flatter. Folks will be less likely to stay here, and we are going to see more and more of that talent that we educate be repatriated. So when you look at reasonable growth assumptions for what will happen with the nanotech sector and, frankly, science and technology capabilities going forward, we're going to need to take action now to start bridging that gap. We're quite excited about this legislation. I think it's important to note that this does not try to impose anything. It is not imposing the use of the equipment, nor is it imposing the adoption of curriculum. What it is doing is empowering. It is empowering world-class, committed, capable science teachers in the high school, community college, and university level to make use of this technology to inspire the next generation of scientists and entrepreneurs. I believe Thomas Edison once said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. It's important to recognize that without the inspiration, no one undertakes the perspiration. And this is an incredibly important opportunity to really inspire the students throughout the country. In closing, I think it's incredibly important that we provide these kind of programs that allow our best and brightest, wherever they may be, in high-need schools and in low-need schools throughout the country, to reach their full potential, because we need to in order to compete successfully in the future landscape.
All right, thank you. Dr. Wheeler.
Step number one, learn how to use a microphone. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this testimony on behalf of the National Science Teachers Association. My name is Jerry Wheeler. The last 12 years I've served as Executive Director of NSTA. I started my career as a high school physics and chemistry teacher, and then went on to get a PhD in nuclear physics. And early on in my university research career, I got bitten by the teaching bug, and I kind of went bad, but I ended up at the National Science Teachers Association. Mr. Chairman, while we understand the importance of nanotechnology, and you've heard that testimony, and its application to a wide range of technologies, and the importance of introducing nanotechnology to our students, we do have concerns about H.R. 2436. In light of the many challenges we face in science education, we believe this legislation places inappropriate attention and emphasis on nanotechnology at the high school level. I'd like to bring 5 points to your attention concerning, again, high school. I'm not talking about the other domains. First, we believe the legislation does not recognize the serious concerns about high school lab exercises and experiences raised by the National Academy of Sciences report, America's Lab Report, Investigations in High School Science. The NAS report found that in the vast majority of schools, there is a lack of agreement of how to define the high school lab, on the goals of the lab experience, and it also found, in the vast majority of schools, many teachers are not prepared to even lead the lab, high school science lab. In an email survey that NSTA did this past March, I think further illustrates the points. And in my written testimony, I've added a lot more of these, and so these are just indicative. I'm only picking 2 short things. We asked teachers and science supervisors to describe the problems of the lab experiences in their schools. Quote, excuse me, "Dear NSTA, I have no specific safe area in which to conduct labs. My yearly budget is the same as it was 12 years ago. I must purchase all my own equipment and supplies. I have no safety equipment other than a portable eye wash station and a fire extinguisher." One more quote, and then I'll go on. "Dear NSTA, my high school building was built in 1970. The budget for yearly supplies have not changed in the 6 years I've been here. I have a supply budget of $750 a year. I teach between 3 and 4 science subjects per year, 7 classes per day, 2 of them being chemistry and physics. I have absolutely no supplies to teach electricity or magnetism or optics." Mr. Chairman, it is clear the biggest need is not for high-tech specialized equipment in the classroom. Many high schools labs are in desperate need of facilities, basic equipment, and teacher training to simply teach physics, chemistry, and biology. Teachers need basic, solid equipment and more of it. The second point I want to make to you today is the limited role that the high-tech equipment in high schools play. Most teachers would have limited use of the electron microscope in their schools. It might be of value to select schools with cutting-edge science fair projects, or schools where Intel talent search is encouraged. That would be a very valuable experience for that small number of students. But we question how many labs could realistically be structured around nanotechnology. Third, space limitations, safety limitations, training and service limitations, budget limitations, and curriculum limitations all hinder the full use of specialized equipment in most schools. The training to incorporate the use of this equipment into the curriculum and the training to use and maintain the high-tech equipment almost nullify any hope of seriously implementing it into secondary schools. The vast majority of teachers would be unable to service or repair these instruments. Fourth, nanotechnology is not tied to any existing content standards. Many high school teachers have a predetermined number of topics to cover in a short time allocated for science and lab. For the most part, when teachers introduce new experiences to students, the curriculum they use must be mapped onto learning outcomes that are defined in their state content standards. This is especially true in this time of No Child Left Behind, and this is the year where the science assessment begins. Given the research on student misconceptions and poor scores that we're experiencing on NAEP and the international tests, focusing on nanotechnology may result in underprepared teachers doing a lot of hand-waving rather than focusing on the instruction of fundamental science. Fifth and final point, Mr. Chairman and subcommittee members, science must be for all. As noted earlier, grants from nanotechnology equipment will undoubtedly benefit the schools that already have strong AP programs in affluent neighborhoods. But there are far too many high-risk schools with limited lab resources. Still fewer qualified science teachers. These needs must be addressed first so that science truly can be for all. In closing, Mr. Chairman, there are a number of critical needs in science education that can and must be addressed by federal programs. These needs have been identified in the report we're all familiar with, Rising Above the Gathering Storm, or the Augustine Report, and have been raised repeatedly in hearings before this subcommittee and in the Senate. With so many challenges to current high school lab sciences and science education in general, the National Science Teachers Association does not believe that the legislation that would authorize $15 million to strengthen the capacity of the United States secondary schools to prepare students for careers in nanotechnology, unquote, is the best use of our limited federal funds. And this they would prefer that the grant funds be provided so that labs could be able to purchase basic equipment and supplies so that every high school lab will have enough basic microscopes so that every child could use a microscope rather than 2 or 3 students on one. Grant funds should also be used for more highly qualified teacher training in lab science. I assume that's not for me, but I see the red light, so I'll stop and I'll be available for answering questions.
Thank you very much. We'll start instituting buzzers instead of lights, but in that case, that just means we're going back into session over Capitol building, but we should have at least a fair bit of time before votes are called. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions, and this is, in my judgment, a good hearing, because good hearings you come away from somewhat torn, because there are good arguments made on both sides. I think there's consensus from what I hear that nanotech is absolutely important to teach people, that it is clearly something that we need to know now, but will even grow in importance in the future. But at the same time, the question is, what is the efficacy of this particular legislation vis-a-vis other needs? On that front, one of the questions that runs through my head is, so Dr. Wheeler's point, and we've heard this in this committee before, about people having no lab space or no equipment at all, just even for rudimentary science. On the one hand, one could say, well, that should be the priority. On the other hand, to be perfectly blunt, $15 million isn't going to remedy that either. If we took all this proposed $15 million from the bill that's been described, it would be a drop in the bucket on that, to be perfectly honest, at the federal level. Most of that responsibility probably ought to be borne by the local school districts. Conversely, my question then, though, is how, if we were to authorize this bill and put forward the $15 million, how can you scale up nanoscale research? How can you get this information out beyond the lucky few schools, be it high school, secondary, or post-secondary schools? How do you get it out there in ways that you couldn't through just computer simulations or something like that, or just some eloquent graphic illustration of the kind of things we saw there? How do you do that? And I'm open to that question. That's the question. How do you do it, and where do we get the bang for the buck if we do that? I'm open that to whoever wants to address it.
I think it was mentioned by 2 people testifying that, in fact, there's plans for extending distance learning and plans for simulation, use of simulations and models, et cetera. And again, I concur with you and echo your comment that there's in no way does an NSTA think that nanotechnology isn't important. What we're talking about is what's the appropriate use at this particular stage. But there's a lot that has occurred with nanotechnology. With distance learning. The one that comes to mind, Chairman Baird, is the JASON project and remote access, and that kind of has the best of both worlds. Still pricey, but at least the young learner, gets a chance to get his or her hand on the joystick and do something with it.
Dr. Fraser?
What we have been doing in Columbus is working with the Columbus City Schools, which are mostly underprivileged, of course, and working with kids who come just to use these new tabletop SEMs and start getting familiar. So we can see how best we can work with the schools. We've had the teachers over, and the teachers have been, can't think of one who's not been just very excited about the possibility of getting together. And so the plan is that we're going to take these SEMs and move them for a week at a school, because they're highly transportable, and then prepare the students before they get there with simulators and leave them with the simulators afterwards on the computers. So that effectively, for just a couple of machines, we'll be able to influence a large number of students that way. The key thing is, though, and it's quite rightly brought up by Dr. Wheeler, is that we have to prepare modules so that the teachers can teach the stuff and it has to fit into their lesson plan. So we can't just go to professors and say, you should do this and this and this, because that's not going to work. But working together with the teachers, they know where they can fit things in and where they could enhance the teaching. And the students themselves have taught us a great deal about that by working with the equipment and saying, oh, if we were to do this or if we were to do that. So I think it's working together, and that's what I view this bill as, is that part of it is the preparation of modules to help the teachers as well as the students use the equipment, and then have the equipment go around a school district like that. So I think it can be quite effective for, compared with our research funding, quite effective in terms of the size of the funding.
They could do something away from the machinery, so to speak.
Absolutely, they could do it at home.
And then when it becomes available, you've planned and then you execute that during the week in which it's at your school or the few days it's at your school.
They could put their own samples in there. Before that, they'd have samples that we would have essentially imaged for them. But the simulator works as though they're at the microscope. It's a very, very useful simulator.
So the combination of the simulation plus
yes,
the occasional hands-on opportunity is what you see as the benefit, and that's where you get the scaling of it.
yes. And what you want, of course, is the machines in every school, obviously. But if you can't do that, then I think this is a very effective alternative.
Dr. Ganguly?
Add to that.
Please hit the mic button.
It's because this is just a tool, and if we are comfortable with the teacher training, and actually we've been talking about that, we will incorporate it. It won't take the place of anything. What it will do is it will enhance our method of delivery and will empower our students, because that is what we are trying to do, is we are trying to make them excited about it and to see the leg of a fly and something that they have done, not something that they looked at, not the image that they looked at. If they were able to do this by punching a couple of buttons and then looking at the leg of the fly, that is I cannot tell you how exciting that would be for the students. It would be something that they did themselves. It is not something that somebody did and posted on the computer and they looked at that picture. So it will empower our students and give them that level of excitement.
In a way beyond just a simulation.
Beyond just a simulation.
Dr. Ucko and then Mr. Murdock, and then we'll...
One of the things I think that will help to increase dissemination is the whole aspect of cyber learning, and that's an area that the National Science Foundation is getting increasingly involved in. There's one study that came out recently that I think speaks exactly to this question. It involved high school students that were connected remotely to an atomic force microscope using a nanomanipulator with haptic capability, so they could actually feel what it felt like moving the probe across materials was a virus that they were studying. And the research that they did indicated that the kids learned increasingly about the morphology of viruses much more using this technique than they did from the classroom type of teaching. So I think cyber learning offers a way to make these kinds of equipment more widely available to basically anybody with computer access, or if they have haptic phenomena for this nanomanipulator, that would be even better.
Murdock?
If I could talk about the human factors rather than the technology for a minute, and to borrow a term from nanotechnology, I think this can do it from the bottom up. I think it's a novel approach to create a significant incentive for those world-class driven capable teachers to go to the NCLT, for example, and do the research experience for teachers and develop that greater understanding body of knowledge to bring that back to the classroom and to become agents of change, if you will, to inspire other teachers within their schools as well as within their geographies. And it can change the system over time. It will take time. Any solution to our needs will take time, but through those students. And I think that what it does is creates a distributed leadership network that we can draw upon over time.
Dr. Regents.
Thank you very much. Several comments, perhaps questions. First of all, I think the real issue is the high schools, because the universities, some will have nano equipment ready. Some of it may have been passed down from laboratories that have used it. Also, universities, colleges, and community colleges are already eligible to purchase such equipment underfunding from the current National Science Foundation programs. So I think we're really talking about the high schools. This is something that would be wonderful to have, but I get back to the real world. I spent a good share of my life trying to help teachers in schools, elementary and secondary schools, do a better job of teaching science. And I'd have to agree with Dr. Wheeler. I mean, this is wonderful, but you can't ignore the incredible problems that we already have in the schools. In many of the schools, you can't even use this profitably without doing a lot of other steps as well. And that's what we've empowered the National Science Foundation, and we're also empowering the Department of Education to work on these issues, first of all through professional development of teachers, and secondly through purchase of equipment. So the question with the bill is, do we really need a specialized bill to cover one area when we already have a lot going in more general areas, and we're trying to build up the base now? If we had an infinite amount of money, no problem. This would be a great bill. But we don't. And so the question is, as indicated in my opening statement, do we want to do this to help the schools that are very good, where students already have many advantages, or do we want to try to reach the entire system? I don't have the answers, but I'm just telling you these are some of the problems we face here. Really going to allocate money for this, for rather specialized use for the benefit of a small number of schools that are not high-need schools, and students, relatively small number of students who are not high-need students. And I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying we have some other problems to address here too, and to optimize the use of the funds. Now, perhaps the easiest way would just be to put this new program in the Defense Department, and there'd be plenty of money to, if you label it properly, there might be plenty of money to accomplish what you're interested in, what the sponsor of the bill is interested in.
The anti.
Yes, right. But unfortunately, that's probably not an option here. So I've just rambled on a bit, but I welcome any comments anyone would have on my concerns that I've expressed. Fire away. Yes, Mr. Vandiver.
I would suggest that as nanotechnology is a very difficult and abstract topic, challenged not only with an understanding among the students, but among the teachers, and providing resources to those teachers to help their understanding and comfort with the topic. I think we have to be focused and directed as to how we provide our resources if we, in fact, intend for nanotechnology to be part of our classroom experience. I think that the context and background in nanotechnology is essential for the beginnings of understanding. So I think providing the resources will help focus attention and understanding among teachers and students in nanotechnology.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Murdock.
Thank you very much. A few thoughts. One, I think it's important that the program makes use of leverage, ties into all the programs that are out there, and I referred to the NCLT earlier, and there are many others that I think it can effectively coordinate with and leverage. But I think there's also a lot of value in having a well-defined program and clarity and focus. It generates a lot of excitement and awareness, and I don't know the answer to this question, but I'm not sure how broadly those programs are used by the folks that would be using this program. And so by creating a new vehicle, having it very clear and communicating it broadly, I think you might find that participation is in fact broadened, and that you do reach more of those needy schools in so doing than the alternative path of what's out there today. As I said, I don't know the answer to the question, but I think it's quite possible that would happen.
Under the bill, only a quarter of the grant can be used for teacher education. And of course, as I mentioned already, we have other teacher education programs, but those are more broadly based. I guess I'm also concerned, let me also just mention, if a school would desire to do that, this is already available. Nanotech equipment would qualify under the PALS program, which we already passed as part of the American Compete. So it's not that it can't be done already. Anyone else want to comment? Back to my comments. Okay, just to wrap it up. Great idea. I taught many years myself, and I was started teaching in an era when lasers were brand new. I made the local newspaper when I got the first laser within 50 miles. Great thing in the classroom, everyone loved it. It was hard to build a curriculum around that. Did wonderful things with it, got some interest developed. It almost sounds to me like, from some of the comments you've made, this is in the same category. This will attract student interest, being something new and groundbreaking. And again, is it worth the price we're paying here? How would it mesh? And the biggest question, frankly, is how would it mesh with other programs National Science Foundation already has? I'm certainly not, in spite of my negative comments, I'm not totally negative. I'm just saying we got to work all this through before we consider passing.
Thank you, Dr. Ehlers. This committee benefits tremendously from Dr. Ehlers' science knowledge, but also his background as a science teacher and his critical approach to whatever topics before us. Thank you. Dr. McNerney.
Thank you, Chairman Baird. Both the chairman and the ranking member have alluded to the limitation of this bill, i.e. the $15 million. With that amount, you really can't touch that many classrooms. But one thing you could do is develop a curriculum that teachers could use and learn from. If you were to do that, Dr. Ucko, what would you include in that kind of curriculum that would be beneficial to students transferring to job skills or so on? And what would you want to include in that kind of?
I guess what I would say is that we're already developing curriculum in this area through the NCLT and some of the other grants, the Nano Instructional Materials Development grants that have been funded previously. And that's really part of the challenge, is figuring out how do you take this new emerging area and insert it into the curriculum. Do you use it to teach something new, this whole new domain? That's probably very difficult to do. Perhaps easier would be to teach existing science and technology using nanotechnology as examples to facilitate that, because that's already part of the national standards and the testing. So that's a real issue. How do you take advantage of nanotechnology, however you teach it, and use it in the curriculum? It's not a trivial issue, and it's really early to answer that question, because the things that we funded are still in their second or third year in most cases, and we don't have the answers yet. There's very little research out there in terms of how do you develop curriculum, what curriculum works, what are the most effective strategies for teaching nanotechnology. So I guess I would say we need to wait a little bit longer to answer that question.
Thanks. Well, clearly, Dr. Ganguly had sort of indicated one of the priorities is to inspire the kids. You want to inspire them not just to go into nanotech, but to also go into study their math or do the other things that they need to do to be successful when they get to college, and move on from there to contribute to the country. So that would be something that would be a challenge, a huge challenge, and I guess that's something we all need to think about, how we would do that. Dr. Wheeler, I had one of the things you said sort of sparked my interest is when you mentioned safety, and I know nanotechnology has safety issues. How big of an issue would that be for a classroom, a lab in nanotechnology?
I don't think that's an issue, Congressman. I mean, there are issues, but I don't think that's a very big one. The issues in terms of that equipment coming into the classroom, and again, forgive me, my age, doesn't translate as well to nanotechnology. But I don't think safety is an issue. I think the bigger issues are the points I made, but within that point, the bigger issue would be the maintenance cost, the training of the teachers to keep that equipment active. If I could take, since I have the microphone, just put a quick answer on your last question. I'm not sure that I would invest, and it's a little bit related to Congressman Baird's question earlier on. I'm not sure I'd invest in $15 million into new curriculum projects, in part because, as NSF has said, they're doing some, but in part, I was a junior in high school when Sputnik went up. Federal government's invested a lot in curriculum projects, and we're still in deep trouble right now. What we have to deal with is that the teacher know the science, are the standards clear, does he or she have the training they need, does it align to the assessment? And a new curriculum is, I'm sorry, is not going to solve the problem we're in right now.
Thank you for that assessment. You know, I have to say, Sputnik did inspire me to go into science. So, I mean, I don't know if it was a curriculum or if it was the actual threat that we perceived from Sputnik, but
I didn't play with
involved.
But I didn't play with a rocket after that. It inspired me.
Do you think this high school training could lead to jobs, to actual jobs, Mr. Murdock?
Well, I think obviously downstream. When I think that the high school training, and in particular, as I said earlier, what it will do is it will provide the inspiration to undertake the work going forward in the collegiate level and in postgraduate level to keep more folks into the sciences. I will tell you a related thing that we at the NanoBusiness Alliance have been working toward launching, haven't launched yet. We refer to as the NanoBusiness Talent Program, Total Applied Learning Through Entrepreneurship. And the idea is to get top math and science students in high school into entrepreneurial environments to begin working with and understanding the impact of science, and again, how it relates to the world at large, how it relates to businesses, to improving quality of life, and frankly, to national competitiveness and security as well. And so I think there's a very important thing about getting exposure to the importance and the impact of the sciences as early as practical into our educational setting, and that will downstream lead to those opportunities.
Thank you.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Very quickly.
I'll yield the time that I don't have remaining.
The chair will yield.
Thank you. Just the interplay of two people being influenced to go into science by Sputnik made me feel very old. Because when Sputnik went up, I was inspired to go into politics. If we had a government that couldn't even launch a rocket, obviously they need some scientists here. Thank you.
Another good thing the Sputnik did. One scientist and one politician out of it. Mr. Neugebauer from Texas.
Sputnik, what's that? No, just a gray hair probably gives me away. You know, I followed with interest, and Texas Tech University in my district has a very robust nanotechnology program there, and it's very interesting. In fact, had an opportunity to tour there a year or so ago. I guess the question is we hear a lot of people coming and saying we have got to get more of our young people interested in math and science because industry comes and sees members of Congress and saying, you know, one of the reasons we're outsourcing jobs to other parts of the world is we don't have the folks here to do that. And the reason we're asking for more visas for people to fill that need. And so I guess the question today, one of the questions would be is who's filling the jobs in nanotechnology today? Somebody want to fill that question?
Well, I think you have to look at it in terms of the evolution of the technology. Right now, with the federal funding, primarily driven through the 21st Century Nanotech R&D Act, there have been a lot of scientific breakthroughs. And so many of these companies that have been formed are really in the earliest phases, right? They're just transitioning off, university campuses or federal laboratories, and it is really translational research that's taking place. So it is drawing upon the PhD scientists and engineers. By and large, as a class, if you look at my membership, most of them are what I would characterize as the translational research or product development phase, as opposed to the manufacturing phase. And so who's meeting that need right now? It really the universities, PhDs, and postdocs, and folks that are trained in that avenue. As it will evolve over time, though, we're going to need technicians non-PhD level, master's and undergraduate level engineers, and technically proficient folks. And you see that some of the more mature nanotechnology companies that are moving to the manufacturing phase, that the skill set migrates over time, but all of them need to have some base level of scientific engineering and technological proficiency.
I think the other issue that I thought was interesting, and I think is probably more alignment with my thinking, is with the computer technology that we have today in simulation, and how we're teaching young people today. I mean, how they learn, how young people, video games, and so it's a very much an interactive with computers. If it doesn't make sense, at least in the initial phases, until this industry is a little more robust, to generate some curriculum, as the other gentleman was saying, is based around using some interactive, software to stimulate, the interest in that technology. And then the other piece of that is that's more widely distributable. Most every school we're working in that direction has some computer technology available to it, so you get it to more kids to see if their appetite is interested in that area before you go invest a lot of money in equipment to do that. I thought it was kind of interesting what Mr. Vandiver said, and we have a science spectrum in our community, and they bring a lot of exhibits and stuff, and it's a regional, probably serves 20, 30 counties in my district because of rural part of the country. That's certainly the ability to complement the curriculum that you might put in the schools, where you letting them to do it, in a simulation. Then you can pool that resource, and where more people can go and actually see then and play with, if you want to say, because they all want to play with it, obviously. But I think the underlying question is this the role for the federal government, or is this something that school districts and communities that want to have in economic development entities that want to give their communities an edge, is that something they should be doing? Question. Anybody got any answers? Yes, sir.
I think the intention of the bill is not to fund these instruments at all schools, but it's to spark the whole program so that the local districts will start joining in and leverage the federal investment. And the federal investment's worthwhile because we as a nation would like to remain globally competitive, and to do that we have to have this workforce that will eventually develop through, I believe, the use of the instruments and capturing people into science and having them highly motivated. So I think that's the idea. It's not for the federal government to support the whole program, but to kickstart it with getting something back from their dollar investment, which is workforce.
And the question is are we far enough along with the curriculum yet to start buying devices, or do we need to get the high school curriculum a little bit further along, get the simulation in there, and see if there's demand? I'm new to the political arena. I come from the business world, and before we went out and manufactured a lot of things or developed a lot of lots, we always wanted to make sure that somebody wanted one when we got them done. And so I guess that's the question. Mr. Wheeler, do you want to run with that?
Yes, Congress, thank you. And that takes me back to my first point, is the National Academy of Sciences report said that as a nation we are confused even about the role of our labs. Is it to excite the student because they can move along? Is it to teach them the nature of science? Is it to have them verify some law of science? So I would concur with your last comments, except I probably wouldn't stress just curriculum. It is even more fundamental than that, is what's the role of the lab within the curriculum, and what kinds of other ways within the curriculum or the child's experience can we accomplish the things we want to accomplish. So I think that very good comment and worth answering carefully.
Dr. Lipinski.
Thank you, Chairman. You surprised me there. I thought we were going to go to Ms. Hooley there. I wanted to thank Ms. Ganguly for introducing this bill. I've really been convinced that nanotech really is the new industrial revolution. I've been working with Northwestern University, and Mr. Murdock and I have that in common. We're both alums of Northwestern, and I know he's working with a lot of people there in terms of nanotech. Northwestern right now is ranked 5th in the nation in nanotech, and there have been about 10 spin-off companies that are conducting cutting-edge nanotech research that have come from Northwestern, and they do have the International Institute for Nanotechnology there. So I'm very proud as an alum of Northwestern, and also very happy representing part of Chicago, representing the district in the Chicago area, that Chicago area is doing this. In Illinois, Small Times Magazine ranked Illinois 8th in the nation in nanotech. University of Illinois is also doing some good work on nanotech. Has 4 centers dedicated to nanotechnology. So it's great to see this all taking off, and I think it's important to be looking at for all of science and technology. It has to start with early education. But I want to ask Mr. Murdock, in the nanobusiness community, what is the greatest concern when it comes to education right now? Is it at the elementary level, secondary level, or higher education level? I mean, where is the interest focused in the nanotech business community as to where education has to be, nanotech has to become more part of the education, or the future of nanotech? What does it rely most upon right now? Which level of education seems to be most important or stands out most in the community?
Well, I think right now, just by nature of the demands in the immediacy, when you look at these companies, they are endeavoring day in and day out to, as I said, translate this science into real-world products. And so the immediate needs at this stage are in the PhD level, but there's recognition. I think what's incredibly positive about the community and my membership is that they are thinking long-term. There's recognition that's today's battle, if you will. That's today's challenge, and that I think there's recognition that the next step, getting the broader technical workforce, is going to be very problematic. As you look at, as a company grows, you have the couple founding scientists, and you have a couple of PhDs that work on those companies, and when they're in the 5 to 10 people. But as they grow, getting that next level of talent in there, and I think that is at the master's and collegiate level is going to be challenging. But it's something that we're going to have to address across all levels over time. I think there's broad recognition that we just simply don't have a large enough technical workforce, and that's why everyone's here all the time looking on the H-1B issue, is that folks are looking to import the talent because they're not finding what they need out there today.
Is it more a concern with more basic level STEM ed rather than, we're looking at nanotech and we're speaking specifically about nanotech here, but as we all know, nanotech covers a lot of different areas. It is a real concern that we just don't have the students, we're not teaching students to even have the basics in engineering and math, science, to be able to even become interested and to do any kind of work that will help in the nanotech field.
Let me try to take that. I think there's broad recognition that there's a shortage of STEM ed across the board. I think what is more unique about nanotechnology and what the companies need are folks that are trained in an interdisciplinary fashion. Think of a T, if you will, broad enough to bridge 2 disciplines and deep enough to have the capability within one to do something distinctive. And that's kind of the model of typically what folks are looking for. And that means you need to have a robust foundation in science, technology, engineering, mathematics across the board to have that breadth, and then to be able to go deep.
Does anyone else have any? Yes.
I still want to make the case that it's about context. I was also inspired by space science and astronomy to go into science. And if I understand correctly, the best radio telescopes looking out are looking at a resolution of about 10 to the 8th, 10 to the 9th meters. Take that the other way and look in. So we're in that same realm. And if you will, it's like a universe within. And just like we discovered all of the strange behaviors and new concepts looking out, we're discovering those looking in as well, but the context isn't readily available to students. So, the materials are behaving in ways unexpected, and the properties of matter are going against intuition. And, I think this is the stuff that inspires, and, just like cosmology inspired me when I was young, I can see this. If you really understood the context of what science is achieving today, I think you will get that inspiration, and I think that's the context that we're talking about.
Thank you.
Saving the best for last, the author of the bill, Ms. Hooley.
Well, first of all, I so appreciate all of our panelists for being here today and their thoughtful presentations. I'm just going to make some comments and then would like some reaction. It seems to me not too long ago, computers were great big huge rooms, and then we got them into our universities, and then we got them into our high schools, and now every grade school has a laptop on their desk. And it wasn't just exclusive for some schools. It's really now generally used in all of our schools. As far as whether the federal government should have a role or not, we have a role in a lot of things. I mean, anytime we're talking about an emerging technology that we want to encourage happening, we get involved in it. This committee just passed a significant bill to make sure that we have enough science and math teachers, because we don't have enough science and math teachers. So I look at this piece of legislation really as, and I think a couple of you said this, as an agent of change, as an inspiration, because you have to, first of all, inspire students. They have to get interested. They have to be excited about something. And I think this is exciting. And they have to be inspired if they're going to go into the field of math and science and just teach it. We did a symposium in Oregon. We've got a collection of universities working on nanotechnology. We did a symposium. And, frankly, most people had no clue what nanotechnology was. And if you went out on the street and you talked about nanotechnology, they wouldn't know what it was. Just like they didn't understand or know what computers did and what they were, 30 years ago. I guess I see this as a little piece that adds a little spark to inspire people to become teachers or to go into that field. And it is a small way of saying, we think this is going to be one of the industries in our future, and we need to do something with this. And, that's the reason I introduced the bill. I think it has a lot of merit. I think it is a very modest start. I understand that it's going to, not cover that many schools and that many students. But if we get people to at least understand what nanotechnology is all about, and some of our students to understand what it's all about, and we inspire people to go into math and science, it may help. So that's, I don't know if you want to respond to any of that, but any of you that like to respond to those comments. Not really a question.
I would like to thank you on behalf of all students for introducing the bill, because it will be a powerful tool which will transcend all fields of science. Because it will let the students get involved, get excited, and be involved in their own learning. That is much more of an empowerment than anything else. They have to be involved in their own learning, and they will be if we have this kind of tools available to us. And in 30 years' time, it will be what computers are now.
Yeah.
So, yes, we have to start somewhere.
Thank you. Any other comments?
If I could just comment briefly, I think you're absolutely right about the inspiration, and we did have Sputnik, and that inspired a whole generation of folks to go into science and technology. And honestly, we haven't had the next Sputnik over the the past couple decades. And I think that's a significant part of the erosion, if you will, of the math and science and technology base. It's quite possible that maybe the Russians see that they have theirs. As I said before, they committed $5 billion to nanoscience research, which I find to be pretty extraordinary. And they recently announced that. And so maybe it will engender a little bit more of the same response. But I think the framing of this as a seed program to kickstart a virtuous circle of a distributed technology that gets into the hands of the students so that they can be inspired and engage in honestly self-directed learning where they can take control is a neat framework. And I think I talked earlier about trying to change from viewing this as a bottom-up. I think it is a bottom-up way to empower world-class teachers in all schools and students to really become the leaders of tomorrow.
Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge with Dr. Wheeler, I understand. I've been in our schools. I've visited our schools, and I know how bad some of our labs are and how much help that they need. I look at our community colleges and look at the number of students that are turned away because we don't have the right labs and the right equipment and enough buildings and enough teachers. So it is, again, we've tried to put a program into place to inspire people to go into math and science, and if we can add to that inspiration by some event that's happening, I think that is to everybody's benefit, and hopefully then that in turn also helps schools decide that it's really important that we upgrade and try to put some money into our science labs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank the gentlelady and applaud her for initiative. And as a former teacher, I know how much you value the importance of exciting students and getting them interested in the topic, and there's just no substitute for that. We may do just a couple of remaining questions, and the puzzle for me is, let's suppose we did this. Let's suppose the money were made available. I've been to a number of high schools that have CAD/CAM systems, which were once, state-of-the-art gee-whiz things, and now are actually fairly common in some of our voc ed, career tech ed programs. But what has troubled me a little bit is that some of the exercises I've seen the students doing are write your name on the computer and then make the CAD system carve your name in a piece of plastic. Okay, so you've got a nice name tag with your name on it. I'm not sure what they got out of that. And so my question, obviously there are more intricate and interesting ways to use a CAD system and to make it an educational experience, but as someone who visits every high school in his district every 2 years, I see amazing things done and I see waste of time. What would each of you say is the most important, what would be the key criteria, if you were to say 2 or 3 things that you would put on this if the program were to move forward in terms of using this money? What would be the most important thing? If the Congress were to decide, yes, Ms. Hooley has it right, nanotech is something we need to invest in, this money will be well spent, what would be the most important things that would have to happen to make sure it was indeed well spent? And I'll just, Dr. Ucko, and then we'll work our way to the right.
I guess I would answer that by saying that it would be part of a well-tested, well-developed program, and not just a piece of equipment that's put into a facility. Using the development, figuring out what kids need to learn, how is whatever intervention you're doing going to help kids learn? Does it build on learning progressions? That is, does it tie into what they already know and take them to the next level of what they need to know? Has it been tested? Has professional development done for teachers to make sure that they know how to properly use whatever this is in the best way, and that it ultimately has an effect that shows up on student assessments?
He put it in a nutshell, actually, is that, you have to have professional development for the teachers because, we are lifelong learners and we like to learn, but we have to have the opportunity and the chance to learn it. And once we do, we will be able to apply it into our teaching. And then, of course, finally, there has to be an assessment for it. But with the professional development, we can use this as a part to enhance our teaching.
And obviously, I agree with what's been said so far, except I think most of the nanotechnology work is done at the graduate level right now. That's at universities. So I think it would be highly effective in the short term to develop modules as a combination between high school teachers and faculty.
I think, part of a competitive grant process where, based on the merits of the proposal, innovative ideas building on best practices could be rewarded and advance the field.
I guess two thoughts. One, obviously it has to be integrated into professional development. I referred earlier to the research experiences teachers that exists in many of the NSF centers and NCLT that it could be integrated with. The second, we talk about the curriculum development efforts, and that is, a research-driven enterprise developing the next curriculum. There's also translational work that has to take place to translate that into a school and a classroom environment, and I think this could be a very elegant way to develop, if you will, a beta group for the translation of that curriculum development to see how it's going to play in the schools and frankly to accelerate the development and the translation of the curriculum from the research-driven curriculum to what's going to get in the schools and work. So it can be part and parcel of making that happen more effectively and more rapidly.
I think, excuse me, I think Congressman Ayler's kind of hit it on the head when he said something about, none of this is what we do at the high school. And you can even hear in our comments, in your questions, we've all drifted toward the high school. We talk about the teacher. The fact is the bill is very rich and very good ideas in terms of two-year college, undergraduate, and informal. So I'm in that delightful position of saying you really ought to give the money to somebody else. It would be much more used. It would excite the nation more. I'm getting a little bit sophomoric in my comment, but it would excite the nation a little bit more if there was good, rich experiences in informal where families can go in and see this exciting stuff. It would pump up the two-year college and I'd say the undergraduate much more. And what I would do, the same thing we didn't do after Sputnik, I was a customer, but the same thing the country did after Sputnik was it brought teachers into the universities during the summertime and it increased the university professor, researcher, teacher conversations. It was extremely exciting. I was a brand new high school physics teacher at that time. Extremely exciting to go to the University of Connecticut, go to Boston University during the summertime and talk to people about some of these new ideas. So I would say that we have to be very careful as we talk and ask questions of each other that we don't drift or just automatically assuming the high school teacher or school is going to get it. I think the richness of this bill, and I do appreciate the bill, and I think the richness lies outside or at least around the corner when you get into the high school.
Very, very thoughtful answers. Thank you. Dr. Ehlers.
I agree. Very good answers. And I'm not sure what wisdom I can add to it other than first an observation. All the talk about Sputnik makes me feel good because I just finished writing an article which was entitled, "Where is Sputnik when we need it?" Because that's what we have here. We need a reawakening of the importance of science. During my years of working with elementary schools and trying to put science programs in before I got into politics, and also visiting a lot of schools now when they have something special dealing with science, whether it's a NASA program online or a JASON program, then they want me to come out and participate. A couple of things have impressed me. Number one is something we haven't talked about here at all, in my experience, and I have a district that's largely urban. In my experience, the single most important factor in the success of a student is to have at least one interested and involved parent. If you have that, the school and the teachers have a chance. If you don't have that, it's very, very tough for them. Second element is the teacher. And you must have a well-trained teacher. And I can't tell you how many, I've seen very few poor teachers. I've seen a lot of teachers who wanted to teach better in math and science, but they never had the proper training in the subject matter or in the methodology. And I think the most effective use of our money is, first of all, to train the teachers so that they themselves are excited. And then, of course, beyond that, you need a good curriculum, and you have to have the money for the equipment. Trying to teach science without equipment is, I think, quite meaningless. We can do it at the theoretical physics level, but it's kind of backwards to me that we wait until high school and college level to really get students involved in laboratories when the time they really need it is when they're in elementary school. It gets them more excited, gets them more involved. So I'm totally in agreement with what you're suggesting. And Mr. Murdock, you hit it on the nail. We really have to do a better job of developing a scientific core within this country. We can't depend forever on people from other countries. So it's clear what the problems are. It's relatively clear what the solutions are, whether we decide we have to do nanotech in a small number of schools or a large number, or do telescopes or what have you. We just have to do it. But putting it together in a comprehensive, workable way, and above all, providing the training for the teachers is crucial to this. And that means some reforms at the university level, and the requirements for students, the requirements for teachers, the training of teachers, providing adequate equipment in the schools, which I think is one of the most crucial parts. That's why I've been somewhat negative here, because I want to look at the broad picture and see, how does this fit into all of this? How can we really get the kids excited? How can we do three things, actually. Excite and enervate the future scientists and engineers. That's number one. Secondly, how can we prepare the kids for the jobs of the future, so that they will be able to work in plants that deal with nanotechnology or silicon wafers or what have you. And thirdly, how can we keep the populace at large excited about these things so they're willing to pay the bills and support this? So we have a lot of work ahead of us. By we, I mean the scientific and engineering community as well. And speaking to scientists and engineers, I always encourage them to go out to their kids' school or to their nearest school to their business, volunteer to speak to a classroom about why they like science or why they like engineering. Take along some stuff to demonstrate it, some gee whiz equipment. Invite the kids to come to their lab, or if they're field engineers, to come out and see a bridge they're building or what have you. That's the real way to get the kids involved, hands-on, with a lot of things that they normally would never encounter in their lifetime. And I think we have a unique problem today, have had for close to a century. You never had to worry about that in about 1860 to 1880, when 80% of the population lived on farms. You learn an awful lot of chemistry, physics, and biology just by living on a farm. And so a lot of it didn't have to be taught in the schools. And today we have to assume they know zero from day one and work from there. Having pontificated long enough, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Just long enough, though. Dr. Lipinski, Ms. Hooley, either of you have follow-up questions or comments? With that, I want to thank our panelists for an outstanding and very informative and stimulating series of presentations. Thank our audience members and our fellow panelists. And with that, the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you very much. The record will be kept open for 2 weeks if anyone wishes to add additional comments.